Hey darlings. Galina Viktorovna, I'm already halfway home, Arkady said, holding his phone while he was driving. The road is just awful. I won't come back. At the other end of the line, the head doctor of the hospital, where Arkady had been working for years, asked him to come back and operate on an urgent patient with acute appendicitis. Arkady had already had one 2-hour operation today. She went through without any complications, but she took a lot of strength from him. In general, lately, he has often become tired. After half a year, it was possible to already sign a pension document. The surgeon's experience was huge, but fatigue, along with practice, accumulated and sharpened his strength. Galina Viktorovna, Arkady continued to say, Pasha Tillman is on duty now. He can handle it without me. Yes, I think I'll have to give him it. The snowy porridge, which was left over during the day, which the utilities had not managed to warm up by night, froze and rustled under the wheels of the car. I'm tired of everything, thought Arkady. I'll retire and forget the hospital like a terrible dream. I'll travel the world, see how people live in other countries, warm up in the sun, lie on the sand by the sea, drink a cold cola and smoke a good tobacco. However, the last year, half of the world was in lockdown due to COVID and borders were closed. No one saw the end of the pandemic. The entire hospital wing was transferred to COVID patients. Oxygen and artificial ventilation devices were not enough for regular reanimation, and the number of free beds remained less and less every day. And although this COVID wing was turned into a red zone, there were few precautions taken by doctors. Besides, many of them did not believe in the existence of such a deadly virus. And such a relationship was even more strange for Arkady, since there were more than enough deadly exits in the hospital. Arkady had a hard time breathing, and it seemed like he wanted to get rid of all this mess, and at the same time he was afraid of it, because his thoughts about traveling to warm countries. These are only naive attempts to convince himself that it's time to go to rest. In fact, he did not imagine how to be free and what to do hours a day. Without a job, although he was angry at times, but still loved. He had not yet imagined his life. He got tired and a little more gas, wishing to quickly get home. And in that moment, he saw in the light of the headlights a black figure of Polinsky sizes that was covered in snowdrifts. He abruptly pressed the brake. The car creaked on the ice crumbs, turned around its axis twice and froze. The seatbelt painfully crushed his chest. A meter in front of him, Arkady saw a huge moose. He stood completely calm, pulling his sides and letting out thick pairs of clubs from his nostrils. The moose looked straight at him. In the eyes of the animal, the light was reflected with red coals. Arkady's heart was beating madly. He was just lucky that it did not carry him to the forest on the side and did not turn the car over. The moose nodded, waved his terrifying horns, and slowly stepped to the opposite side of the track. Arkady stood for another minute, covered in smoke from the exhaust pipe. Then he hurriedly moved forward, carefully looking into the road. But he did not have time to drive meters, as he saw a new obstacle ahead. A human body lay in the middle of the road, slightly covered in snow. It was difficult to believe in everything that was happening, but Arkady had no reason to doubt his reality. He got out of the car and approached the body. It was a girl in only one underwear. Arkady sensed a pulse. The heart beat faster. A spot of blood was flowing under her head. There were no other injuries at first glance. Arkady carefully examined. As much as he allowed to see the snowfall, there was no car meters away from which the girl could have gotten out of the accident. There are no other reasons for her to appear in the middle of a snowy night track. And who drives in a car almost barefoot? There was no time to come up with any theories. The man was clearly in a critical state. The girl's help should be selfless. It made no sense to call the ambulance. It will be too late until they arrive. Arkady returned to the car, opened the rear door, then took the girl in his arms, and carefully put her in the salon. He turned on the phone and dialed the number. Galina Viktorovna, how is Tillman? Has he started the operation? Good. When he finishes, tell him not to relax. I'll come now. I need him. No. Something happened to me on the way. I'll tell you later. Girl with a skull brain. It will be necessary to urgently make a tomogram and take all the analyses. Perhaps a surgical intervention will be required. No, Galina Viktorovna, everything is fine with me. I am not involved in this. I found her in such a state on the road. In general, I will be in the hospital in minutes. I will explain everything there. Okay, wait. My heart continued to beat in my chest. If it weren't for the moose, then who knows, he would have noticed this girl on the road or would have driven right over her. Rather, I would not have looked. At the right time, this moose was on the track. If the poor thing manages to escape, she will have to put a monument to him. Arkady turned around and went in the opposite direction. This time he was driving fast, not paying attention to the snow. The adrenaline in the body has increased so much that now he was distinguishing every object on the road and controlling himself as clearly as during the most difficult of his operations. On the street, Seryoga was already standing at the reception room with a skating rink on the ready. Together with him, they carefully put the girl's body on the skating rink and headed for the tomography. The MRT office was chased by Galina Viktorovna and her nurse. They ran to examine the girl, measured her blood pressure, took blood from the veins, and did a PCR test. The tomogram revealed a rather serious skull brain injury, but she did not require surgical intervention. The bone was slightly broken. Head injury. But all this is not critical. However, the girl's appearance was not liked by Arkady. There were clearly some other reasons for her so deep dizziness, bordering on a coma. He ordered to make a heart and abdominal cavity Uzi. It is not known how long she lay on the asphalt at minus. Cups or liver could seriously be damaged. Uzi really showed problems with, and had a reason far in the past. It requires more thorough examination. But at that moment, it was obvious that the girl's kidneys were generally refused. Treat the wound, Arkady said again, and connect her to the artificial kidney. Is there a free bed? There is one, said the nurse Masha. And she has any documents? How do we get it? There was nothing with her, answered Arkady. That's how I found her. We should call the police. We'll hold her until morning, but there may be problems without documents. They can, said Arkady, but we can't take her outside. We'll figure it out. I'll call the police myself. What does Galina say? Nothing. What can she say? She's in the same confusion as we are. Okay, said Masha. I'll do everything you say. Arkady left the MRT office and went to the rest room where Pavel Tillman, who was excited about his first self-examination, was already sitting. He was eagerly smoking and drinking a thick black coffee from a huge glass. How did it go? Arkady was interested. I'm afraid to look. Arkady got tired and smiled. Where did you get so much superstition, Pasha? He said. It's the simplest of all operations. It's the simplest for you, and for me, the first without any supervision. Were you as confident in yourself as you are now? Probably not. I can't remember those times. It's like 100 years have passed. What's that boil in the reception? A girl with a head injury and refused kidneys. Are we going to operate? You asked me not to relax. No, not yet. Until the explanation of all the details. Phew, sighed Tillman. Thank God. And he's still shaking. 2 operations in a row for me, so far too much. Now you can relax, calmed him. Sorry, I need to make a call. He left the room and called the police, explaining briefly the essence of the incident. At the other end, he was promised that a criminal would come to the hospital in the morning. It is not clear what the meaning of a criminal is in the morning, when there will be no trace of that incident on the highway. But Arkady was not offered other options. The girl, who had not come to consciousness, was connected to an artificial kidney, treated and sewed a wound on her head. They took additional tests. Its state was more or less stabilized. At least, it will surely survive until the investigator arrives. Arkady sat on the bench in an empty corridor, gushing from the twinkling luminescent lamps. He didn't want to talk to anyone. He was tired after the adrenaline supply ran out in his body, and he was covered with even more force. His eyes were blinded, and thoughts began to get confused in his head. And then he was trembling from the shudder of his sleep visions, in which every time a huge moose appeared before him and looked at him with red, non-blinking eyes. He woke up his noise in the corridor. Arkady looked at the clock, a.m. Soon he saw Galina Viktorovna and two men approaching him. "Arkady Alexeyevich," said the head doctor. "This is for you about the girl." "Hello." One of the men, aged, greeted him with mustache and a flat nose, which is often the case with former boxers. Andrei Borisovich. He introduced himself, an investigator. "Let me ask you a few questions, and then we will form the protocol." "Yes, of course." Arkady got up and shook his hand. "Hello." The second man, quite young, just nodded and said nothing. Apparently, he was a criminal. In his hand he held a suitcase, similar to a medical one. The conversation did not last long. Arkady drew all the details of what had happened to the investigator. Even Lozia mentioned it. He nodded his head and sometimes wrote something down in a notebook. "Okay," he concluded at the end of the story. "Can you show me the place where the girl was found?" "Probably I can," Arkady answered uncertainly. It was dark and snow was falling. "But at least we'll find something. We need something that's not something that's accurate." Notice the criminal. "I'll try." They walked into the girl's room. "Consciousness never came?" asked Andrei Borisovich. "I know, it didn't." "Serious injuries?" "Diffusive axonal damage to the brain." "Volodya, do you understand what you're talking about?" The investigator turned to the criminal. "Quite," replied the one, carefully removing fingerprints from the girl. "I'll take some DNA. Maybe we can find it on the database." "The coma, apparently, is not deep," Arkady added. "The pupils react to light. Let's hope that the vegetative state will pass." "And how long can this state last?" "Can he speak?" "I can't say. Maybe a week, or maybe more than a month. But she won't be able to speak for long in any case. Besides the trauma, she has a lot of problems with her kidneys." "What kind of problems?" "Chronic kidney failure in the terminal stage." "What does it mean?" "Without a hemodialysis device, she can't do anything. If the tests confirm the preliminary diagnosis, then the transplant of the kidney will be required." "Wow, that's great." The researcher shook his head. "How unlucky a man is. Will he survive?" "His body is young. I think he'll fight, and we'll help as much as we can." "So there were no documents with her?" "No." "No signs of sexual violence?" "Did you check?" "Yes, we did. Everything is clear." "I see. Then let's go to the place." "Let's go." Arkady went to the restroom to get dressed, followed by the reddened and excited Galina Viktorovna. "Arkasha, what's up?" "Nothing yet. We'll go to the place now." "Will they find out who she is?" "How do I know?" "They will try." "What should we do?" "What to do? Hope that she will wake up. Then everything will be clear." "Well, Arkasha, don't tell me that." "We'll wake up. And how much time will it take to put the brains back in place? How long can we keep it on the machine?" "The ambulance from the Ministry of Health will come with a commission." "What will I tell them?" "So don't say anything yet. They will walk on COVID. What's the matter with them before this wing?" "Oh, I don't know, Arkasha. These will find a way." "I don't feel good. I have a bad feeling." "Why are you all so superstitious today?" "Here is the same Tillman." "What about Tillman?" "Come on, Galina Viktorovna. Everything will be fine. Don't worry." I ran. "Come on. God bless you. No fluff. No feathers." "Oh, damn it." Arkady was outraged, got dizzy, and left the room. The place where he picked up the girl, we still managed to find. The traces of blood remained on the highway because the communists did not have time to. And the cars that rarely drive in this place did not stir the snow, which managed to melt again in the morning. Criminalist Vladimir took all the necessary samples, made measurements, and photographed every little thing. Even Arkady's car checked for traces of a possible accident. "Do you think I did it like that?" asked Arkady, pointing his eyes at the criminal. "This is our job, Arkady Alexeyevich. You should understand. Now it's important to work out even the most incredible of the versions." "Yes, yes, of course," agreed the doctor. "I understand that." At that moment, his phone rang. The number was unknown. "Yes, I'm listening." "Arkady Alexeyevich Belov?" Arkady also did not recognize the voice in the phone. "Yes, it's me. Where are you? Is everything all right with you?" "And who asks?" "Major Sazonov, MCS. Tell me, where are you now?" "At work." "Something happened. Why are you calling me?" "I see." At the other end, I heard the noise and the anxious voices of people. "Has anyone else lived in your apartment except you?" "Major, I don't understand why you're asking me all these questions. Can you explain in detail?" "Yes, of course, sorry. There is such a thing. I see you are not yet aware. In general, it would be nice if you could now drive up to your house. You will understand everything there." So, Arkady began to worry. "I can't drive up right now. Be kind. Explain to me on the phone." "Okay." The major was a second late. "Do you live in?" "Yes, in it. A gas explosion broke out near you." "What?" Arkady froze on the spot. "Gas. Clap. That's how it's called now. 3 apartments are completely destroyed. We are now dismantling the rubble. We are calling the residents. Thank God. It seems like there are no victims. Only the grandmother on the 3rd floor got injured. Still, it's better for you to come." After the event of this night, Arkady still poorly thought. And now, in general, thoughts in his head refused to work. How many events in such a short time? It just didn't fit in my mind. "Did anyone else live with you?" the major asked again. "No, I'm alone." "Well, then you're lucky. If you were at home, there would be very little chance of survival. You must come as soon as possible." "Okay, I'll come." Arkady was pale, with his phone in his hand. "Something happened?" The investigator was interested. "It's just impossible to believe," Arkady said in a half voice. "What's going on?" "Gas exploded in the apartment under me." "Wow," Major called. "Victims?" "No, it seems to be without victims." "I need to go home. Can I go?" "Yes, of course. Just sign the protocol." "Are we done here, Volodya?" "Done." The criminal called. "I have no more questions for you." Andrei Borisovich continued. "If any questions arise, or you have news about the girl's condition, then here is the investigator who extended the visit. Call me at any time." "Okay." Arkady took the card and put it in his wallet. "Goodbye. I'll call you for sure." "Goodbye." Arkady got into the car, started the engine, and went home, trying to put together a bunch of thought that had been unmanageable in his head. Near the house, a sad picture was waiting for him. Already from the street, it was clear that nothing was left of his apartment. It completely collapsed on the floor below, together with all the furniture. His bed, on which he was supposed to sleep that night, was vertical and was pressed from the side with a heavy plate. The mayor was telling the truth. There was no chance of survival in such a situation for Arkady. He looked for Major Sazonov and wondered what to do with him now. "You will be assigned a room in the sanatorium," said he. "You will have to live there for a while. Don't worry about the documents and the things that survived. Everything that survived will be returned to the owners. They will contact you when they carry out the necessary procedures and investigative actions. You are still going to the administration. If you don't have a passport with you, then show the driver's license. They will explain everything in more detail there. By evening, you will already be in the sanatorium." "And these apartments?" Arkady pointed towards the house. Will they be restored or what? I can't say anything yet. The experts will figure it out. The main thing is that everyone is alive. Don't worry, they won't leave you on the street in any case. Arkady walked through the offices in the administration until the evening. Having formatted a bunch of documents, he still got to the sanatorium. In his room, although small, had all the convenience except the internet. Even lunch and dinner were free. The whole next day at work, he was taken by interrogations and sympathy. They even suggested throwing themselves to the world for a rented apartment if something goes wrong in the sanatorium. Arkady tried to keep calm, assured everyone that he would cope with the problem, but his gratitude for his care was sincere. By evening, he was tired of the fuss that surrounded him during the shift. However, he did not want to return to the sanatorium. As if he could not put a dot in the right place today. 5 times he visited the girl who had been saved, wondering if she had come to his senses for a minute while his sister was in the hospital. Masha negatively shook her head and spread her arms. Galina Viktorovna walked through the rooms and corridors, darker than the clouds. With every hour, I liked more and more. Anna Kosa looked at Arkady, but said nothing. He felt more and more guilty of this, as if it was he who knocked down the girl on the road, hit her in the hospital, and then blew up his own apartment. It was gloomy in his soul, and he did not know how to disperse this gloom so that the son, Pasha Tillman, watching his mentors suffering all day, couldn't stand the evening and offered Arkady to visit him. He lived alone in Dvushka, 3 blocks from the sanatorium, and Arkady agreed. He had to speak up, and Pasha seemed like a good, sincere guy. And most importantly, he knew the line that in personal, soul-saving conversations should never be crossed. They had been friends for 2 years already. Since the day after the end of the medical academy, Tillman has been to the hospital to get practices from an experienced surgeon. Paul's apartment looked surprisingly cozy. Beautiful curtains on the windows, soft turquoise carpet on the floor, a huge plasma TV above the false fireplace, and even an aquarium with colorful fish, which Pavel immediately went to feed as soon as they entered. For Holostek, the situation was even exquisite. What did Arkady notice immediately? Arkady himself has not had such an excessive comfort for a lonely life for the last few years, which arrived at their arrival, and they sat down at the table. The conversation settled immediately, smoothly flowing from one topic to another. Did not you think about starting a family? Asked Arkady when the conversation came about plans for the future. I thought, of course, said Tillman, but first I believe it is necessary to finally stand on your feet so that there are no doubts. Family is children, and with children money will be required a lot. Well, not in the same day they will all appear, said Arkady, feeling how step by step, all problems are solved. It's always scary to think about it. I myself suffered from similar doubts at one time. You never told me about your family, Arkady Alexeyevich. Pavel noticed. I don't even know if you're married or not. Did anyone get hurt in the apartment during the explosion? No, Arkady thought. I was married, but the children did not get married. She had problems with her health, and she died 4 years ago. 4 years had passed since yesterday. I'm sorry, I didn't know about it. I sympathize. Arkady didn't answer anything. Are your parents alive? Asked Tillman after the break. Mother in the village. Years old. For 1,000 miles from here. Every summer I go to her for vacation. I ask her to move to my city, but she doesn't agree to the deal. She lived there all her life. Even in the nearest town, she went there a couple of times. And she didn't like anything there. What can we say about our regional center? How are you and your parents?
Infine.
They live in Rostov. I have 2 sisters and an older brother. But the military one, we rarely see him. All married and married. At this moment, Arkady was called. On the phone screen, the GV was lit up. Yes, Galina Viktorovna, he replied. Arkasha, good evening. Although, of course, yes, what is there good? I wanted to tell you during the day, but you were already so everyone got it. I thought that maybe I could solve this problem myself, but I did not. What kind of problem? Yes, the same thing with this girl. What about the girl? Arkady was tense. In general, in the morning I was called, warned that in 5 days they will bring an urgent patient with kidney stones. The machine in the emergency room will be needed. He is the only free one in our hospital. We need to come up with something, but I can't think of anything. I can't refuse, you know? The man who was knocking on the ward is very serious. What's the investigator? No one called. Galina Viktorovna. And what do you suggest we do? I don't know, Arkady. We need to find out something. I sensed that we would have problems with her. What can we do? Arkady's voice rose a little. First, she is the only witness. And second, we can't touch her now. She won't survive the transport. Yes, I understand, Arkady. You are not the first year married. You're a researcher, aren't you? Maybe relatives will find out. Then we'll have time to transplant. Otherwise, Arkady, it doesn't work. Think about it. I've already broken my head. Okay, Galina Viktorovna, I'll think about it. You don't hurry yet. We'll find a way out. Look for it, Arkasha, look for it. The head doctor concluded and turned off. What's wrong with the girl? Pavel asked when Arkady removed the phone. In days the device must be released. Wait, I'll make a call now. And he, searching for the business card, called the investigator. But there was no new information. No surveillance cameras on gas stations and in the shops adjacent to the highway. No acquaintances were recorded. No messages about the disappearance of people to the police were received. Just like it fell from the sky. Not a single clue. And there were no fingerprints in the database either, like her DNA. That's how it should be. Thielman was surprised when Arkady told him the details of the conversation. But if she were a criminal, they would have identified her quickly. And an honest person happened to him, as if he was not in the white light. There is only one way out for Arkady Alexeyevich. And what is it? To make a transfer. The donor is needed. Where can I find him? Arkady shook his hands. According to the law, only relatives can become donors. Even a husband or a wife is not permissible. But still, you're right. There is now only one way out. Transfer her somewhere is just a conscious murder. I won't let this happen. She saved my life anyway. If I hadn't found her on the road then, it would have turned out to be under the rubble in his apartment. Yes, Talman agreed. Most likely. Not most likely, but for sure. You would see what my bed turned into. And the girl was saved by a moose. Can you imagine? If it weren't for the moose, I would have just passed by her without noticing the snowfall. It's all so strange. Tell me who wouldn't believe such a story. And it turns out that all responsibility for the girl lies now exclusively on me. Yes, I felt it from the very beginning without logical reasoning. And how are we going to be now? Asked Tillman. And this is what he said to us, sounded unexpectedly for Arkady. Pavel unconsciously turned himself into the situation, considered himself her participant. And at the same time, only this, Arkady was grateful to his comrade. That's what Pasha decided something for himself, Arkady. I'll stay over tonight at your place. Don't you mind? Yes, of course, Arkady Alexeyevich. Where are you going now? Get up. And tomorrow I'm going to the laboratory to see Ludmila. She works with 7. What have you thought? If everything goes well, then your help may still be needed. What? I'll tell you later. It's too early for that. First, I need to make a few calls, talk to the right people. If only everything worked out. But it should work out, Pasha. Arkady was getting more and more inspired. Since fate chose me, it cannot just be her mockery. I don't believe it. And now let's go to sleep. Tomorrow we will need strength. Agreed to not ask any more questions. I'll sleep in the small room. In the morning, Arkady left for the hospital's lab. without even saying goodbye to Pavel, who was still sleeping. Ludmila was in place. Arkady gave urine and blood for analysis. Then he went to the tomography and took pictures of his kidneys. As he hoped, the comparison of the analysis with the girl's data gave a positive result. By lunchtime, it was already quite clear that his kidney would suit the girl. The case was left to be decided by the team of transplant doctors and anesthesiologists to manage to organize a transplant in days. Arkady himself assisted several times during the transplant of the liver, so he knew a lot about such operations by ear. For a long surgical practice, he has accumulated a lot of debtors in such circles, where the authorities are concentrated. He helped someone with recommendations, someone with a place in a prestigious clinic, and someone personally operated in critical situations. Many officials, their wives and their children, were obliged to him by the fact that they continue to live. Arkady never took money for his services, for which his late wife even scolded him. Everyone does this. And he never responded to any requests. But now he has not seen another way out. His friend at the institute, a transplant specialist who specializes in kidneys, agreed to help for a moderate salary, but only if he gets a guarantee that he will not have any consequences for this. At one time, when they distributed their group, Arkady gave one student a place in Moscow, and he went here. They were just nominal friends, but Oleg had a debt. That's what they called him. He stayed before Arkady. I had to call the regional prosecutor, whose son Arkady also once helped. The prosecutor, though a little broken, but still gave the promise that an extreme case will cover him. Sooner or later, the relatives of the girl will still look for him, and then it will be possible to work with the papers in a certain way, so that everything goes well for the inspecting authorities. But for now, we must hurry. A friend, a transplantologist, managed to assemble the brigade and in 3 days promised to arrive on the spot, so that everything should be prepared in the operating room. Tillman also agreed to help, like Masha's nurse. Only Galina Viktorovna ran with her swollen eyes and pale face, realizing that if something goes wrong, she will simply lose her job, and this is a minimum. And at most, she can even be put behind bars. She did not even give such an adventure to Arcadius, but she clearly did not forbid it. She said that the one who was with her did not complain about it, as if she knew nothing about his plot. Even the vacation was made urgent, making Arkady the temporary executive of the head doctor in the hospital. Only with the people from the commission who had been hired, she quickly ran through the COVID ward, arranged a rich dinner for them in an expensive restaurant, breaking the rules of quarantine regulations, and disappeared. Even turned off her phone. After 2 days, Arkady was waiting for 3 good news at once. First of all, Oleg kept his promise and came to the hospital with a team of 3 people. Without asking any questions, he looked at the photos and analyses and was surprised by the high degree of compatibility between Arkady and the girl. He even wondered if she was his relative. Well, what a relative, Oleg, Arkady said. If everything was like that, then why all this conspiracy? The results of the analyses are just amazing. You know, everything happens in life, but as you say, you are better off. There was nothing like that in my life, Oleg, so that out of nowhere a relative appeared, about whom I do not hear. In general, this circumstance that struck Oleg became the second good news. And the third thing that especially pleased Arkady happened, so that the girl began to open her eyes and perform reflective actions. Her condition turned into a vegetative coma. The surgery was still complicated, but Oleg had a lot of experience, and the anesthesiologist who came with him was no worse. In addition, Arkady's apartment was under restoration, and in a few weeks they planned to finish it. Now it remains only to pray for the operation to go well, and then whatever happens. Galina Viktorovna continued to hide from her co-workers and was unavailable on the phone. For such a young woman, everyone was offended by her. Another day was required to prepare for the transplant. Arkady signed all the necessary papers where the girl was registered as his daughter, having not yet entered her name and surname, leaving a free place. With an unpleasant outcome, Arkady wrote all the responsibility of the blame on himself. All this, of course, looked like Filkins, but nothing better could be invented. Pasha Tillman, as it always happened, was more worried about others. Arkady, as he could, set him up for an optimistic mood and even suggested that he be cut under the local narcosum. But Oleg categorically refused this idea. It would not help Tillman anyway, and Arkady could be too worried and overload his and his young body. Everyone realized how risky they were. In case of an unpleasant outcome, it would be impossible to explain what happened. Such a fly would be twisted, which would not be able to be stopped by even the regional prosecutor. After a year or two, maybe, and the price of huge nerves and money would be able to shake everything. But at this time, everyone would have to be in trouble, and more than others, Arkady. Oleg did not say a word about possible consequences. Whether he was so sure of himself, whether he understood that the debt was paid in red, and sincerely gave his debt. In such an important role, he is here only because once Arkady gave him a prestigious place. Masha was most excited. She was inspired by this whole idea, and in general, she was amazed by the actions of Arkady because it was the only way out. All others led to the death of an unknown girl, to the point of breaking the unbreakable rules of the medical etiquette. Everyone knew that Masha's nature was extremely romantic, that for medical workers, especially with the experience, it is often not suitable. But the fact that this fragile girl, like Arkady, also checked in the laboratory her compatibility with the donor, was known by one Ludmila. The result was negative. Even their blood group was different from the unknown. In general, everyone seemed to have possessed an invisible spirit of self-sacrifice. A mysterious atmosphere of something wonderful was. The last words of the anesthesiologist, who leaned over Arkady, were made in wad and sounded from afar, losing clear meanings. Arkady opened his eyes again to look at Tillman. He was focused and serious. Noticing that Arkady was looking at him in a doubtful way, he slightly nodded to him. Arkady calmed down and fell into a complete fog. In the reanimation, where the girl was lying on the left of the next bed, the window was opened, and there was a tangible cold in the room. "Wake up, Arkady Alexeyevich." Masha, who had sounded the voice, belonged to him. Arkady recognized him. He looked to the right and saw the nurse in a robe under which a pink sweater was put on. She looked at him with a smile. "So." Arkady's words sounded uncertain and hoarse. "Everything went well? Everything is fine," Masha confirmed and closed the window. "Is Oleg still here?" "The surgery has been over for a long time. 2 hours ago. The doctors are still here. They will leave the brigade in the evening. Should I call him?" "Call him." Masha went out, and Oleg appeared in minutes. "Well, Arkash, how are you feeling?" he asked at once. "Yes, I'm fine. I'm thinking bad for now. I've never been at the patient's place. A useful experience. What's up with the girl? How did it go?" "The state is stable. The kidney is working. Everything in this sense is within the norm. The complications arose a little in another place." "In what?" "This is what Galina Viktorovna will tell you. And I just want to warn you right away so that you don't get yourself into anything, no matter how it goes. I knew what I was going for, and I have no complaints about you. You remember that. And then we'll sort it out." "I don't understand." Arkady was confused. "What's the problem?" "Galina Viktorovna will come to you later. She'll tell you everything." "I'm not quite sure yet." "Okay. Arkady, I'll run. I have to be there in the evening, but the operation is scheduled for the day after tomorrow." "Okay. Thank you, Oleg. When I get better, we'll be in touch. Don't worry, and don't rush with it. Let everything settle down. We will make it in time. Bye." And Oleg left, leaving Arkady in complete confusion. By lunchtime, his self-esteem came to normal. Masha was whining near him and that girl, but she could not answer the questions about the problems Oleg was hinting at, either because she knew nothing or she did it as if she didn't understand. The situation was clarified only by Galina Viktorovna, who appeared in the room only at 4 o'clock in the evening, and asked Masha to leave them with Arkady alone. Arkasha, she said, I understand everything. You saved the situation that seemed hopeless. You were just incredibly lucky. I don't know what gods you prayed to, but they were on your side. But you imagine yourself in my place. And if the result of the adventure was the opposite, do you understand what would await me? You will get a pension in 6 months, and you will get a disability. And I could even get a barship. And I have to raise grandchildren. My second daughter got divorced. You know how many problems there are with children? You don't know. In general, I couldn't stand it. Even though you will curse me, I will not ask for forgiveness from you. Wait, Galina Viktorovna. Arkady interrupted her. I don't understand anything at all. What happened? Can you be more specific? Because everyone is explaining some riddles. Yes, more specific. The head doctor nodded. I called yesterday where it should be and informed about what is happening in my hospital. I couldn't stand it. Nerves were completely released. I didn't believe in a successful outcome of the operation. And in general, what's the difference? Tomorrow, investigators and officials from the Ministry of Health will come. I myself want to tell you about it. And the answer to them is, you keep it to yourself. Here. I say so that it is not a surprise for you, and so that you do not guess where the wind blows from. I told Oleg Vadimovich about everything. He knows. You will also deal with the rest. Their fate is in your hands. Do you understand how many people you have set up with your senseless actions? Arkady listened to the long monologue of Galina Viktorovna and closed his eyes, surprised that everything said did not make any impression on him. The main thing is that the operation went successfully, and that girl will live. Now there is no more side note. Now there will be plenty of time, and he will fix everything. He will figure it out. At that moment, the problem seemed to be an apocalypse for Galina Viktorovna. He saw it so empty that he could not worry about it anymore. He smiled, and a hot tear crawled over his cheek. Well, a very blessed Augustine, the head doctor said, surprised. Everyone went crazy. Okay, you smile on, and I'll go. Come to your senses and, in short, you no longer work for me. I fired you. Bye. Where am I? Sounded from the next bed. This was said by a girl. She, who did not understand, looked around. Where am I? She repeated again and coughed up. Well, things. The chief doctor, who had already gathered, took off his hands and closed the door to the room. Masha, she shouted loudly into the corridor. Where are you? Hurry to the room. And Galina Viktorovna left, not wanting to take part in the future. Masha came running and threw herself to the arcade, but he stopped her, pointing his hand at the next bed. God! The nurse called out. Woke up. Where am I? The girl kept asking the same question, getting more and more coughed up. You're in the hospital. You're in the hospital. Masha ran up to her. You cough. You need to cough now. Just be careful. Please, don't try to get up and don't make sharp movements. Everything is fine. Do you remember your name? Nastia. The girl said, thinking for a second. What happened? How did I get here? Masha's eyes were already wet. It's okay. She took Nastia's hand and said, now you are safe. You were found on the road. Do you remember what happened to you? What are your last memories? No. The girl shook her head. It's hard to remember. My head hurts. It hurts a lot? A lot. I'll make you a shot now. Lie down while you're calm. Okay, Nastia said, and turned her head, looking at Arkady. Nastia, the man thought about himself. What a glorious name. He smiled at the girl and could no longer hold back his tears. What does it matter now what happens to him tomorrow? Or the day after tomorrow? What nonsense is this? The main thing in his life happened here and now. 2 more days passed. The euphoria from the successful surgery and from the feeling of the saved girl who came a little bit of sleep. In her place came the care in the form of a research group from the Ministry of Health, who appeared in the hospital from the capital itself. Arkady could already get up and walk around the hospital. Moreover, after he was interrogated and the arrest warrant was taken, he returned to the sanatorium that same evening. He was forbidden to talk to Nastia, and an operative was sent from the city to watch over her ward. She was the only witness, and given the service she had given to Arkady, the investigation allowed that he could somehow influence her testimony. Her new kidney worked properly, the body did not show any signs of rejection, and even go to the toilet, but they were afraid to translate it from the animation. Investigator Andrei Borisovic had time to come twice during this time and ask Nastia in all details, but Arkady did not learn anything about her story. However, he did not hesitate to talk to the doctor before his departure. I heard you, Arkady Alexeyevich. Problems, he said. The main problems are already behind, and I'll deal with this slowly. The investigator thought for a second, and then said, You have done a very big thing for the investigation. You have preserved the life of the witness. Without her testimony, everything would still remain a mystery for a long time, if it were ever allowed. I would also like to help you with something, if suddenly something is needed on my part. Keep this in mind so that the capital operatives do not invent anything there. An unexpected thought arose in Arkady. I guess I will have one request for you. Say, I'll do everything I can. I have an idea, maybe a stupid one, something like a straw that I want to grab, but still worth checking. Arkady Alexeyevich, believe me, in such confusing cases, there are no stupid ideas. You can't even imagine what unthinkable assumptions turn out to be the only true ones. So don't be shy, just report what you have there. Do you have the DNA analysis result of Nastia now? Asked, inspired by Arkady. Yes. I would like to compare my DNA with theirs. Aha, the investigator quickly realized. You think Anastasia can be your relative? I saw in your case that in medical reports she was passing like your daughter. Am I right? Yes. Objective facts that could confirm this or not. But if suddenly... Okay. When you are in the city, look into the plot and ask criminal Volodya Tsvetkov. You already know him. I will warn him. He will do everything right. Thank you, Andrei Borisovic. You're welcome. And they broke up. As soon as Arkady left the hospital, he was immediately hit by such a bunch of cases that for a whole week he could not do anything else. At first, they pulled from the administration on the business with the apartment, the restoration of which came to an end. Then a lot of time went into the search for a lawyer who agreed to conduct a case of an illegal operation, and there was not so much strength to have time everywhere. In the sanatorium, Arkady returned in the evening, broken, and immediately fell asleep, so that in the morning he would again start fighting for his freedom and for his life. And the conversation with Nastia was becoming more and more necessary. Andrei Borisovic was right. Duritskaya, at first glance, was percent true to Arkady's assumption. More precisely, percent. His DNA with Nastia coincided with this exact accuracy, and it said that she was really his daughter. It seemed completely unthinkable, but Volodya checked 3 times. Now it was an indisputable fact. Of course, this turned the whole case of the operation completely in his favor. But it was also necessary to make an official request for analysis in an independent laboratory, to buy it for the case, to convince a bunch of people. It could last even for a year. At least the lawyer was set for such a term. And yet the black strip that started on the track, when he slowed down the moose that entered his path, ended. And now everything around just blinded the mind with a crystal white tint. And how not to believe in a miracle here? How else can this be explained if not a miracle? But there should still be rational reasons, and Arkady was looking for them, climbing into the most hidden corners of his past. And he found it. Strangely, it almost fell out of his memory because he had never previously scrolled through that episode, which happened years ago. At that time, they especially wanted to have a child with their wife. The wife visited the best clinics in parallel, walking around the grandmothers in the forests of the villages, and Arkady became a sincere believer and prayed in the temples of the Almighty, so that he would give them his mercy. He put candles, ordered prayers, talked to the elders, and those few who claimed that such a miracle had happened to them. For some time, Arkady even became a donor, counting that it would be fair to share other opportunities with children. But his prayers to the Lord did not seem to have reached, or, unfortunately, Arkady had completely different plans. In turn, both the clinics and the grandmother were also powerless. Then it was their last attempt with the wife. They never came back to this question, reconciled with their position. Later, they even thought of having someone as a daughter-in-law. The wife wanted a girl, but they did not have time to form the necessary documents. When the wife fell ill, they were not able to have a child. That's what Arkady remembered. In the middle of the night, suddenly, with a gurgling heart, he jumped out of bed and began to walk around the room from corner to corner, not knowing how to pacify the desire to shout out his whole voice about his discovery. He grabbed the phone, thinking of calling Tillman, but looking at the clock, he did not do it. He did not lie down until the morning, and went to Andrei Borisovich first to knock out his permission to let Nastia into the room. The comparative analysis of the DNA was attached to the case, which was conducted directly by Andrei Borisovich, and completely changed its course. Therefore, there was no reason to forbid Arkady to contact the witness. And Andrei Borisovich went to meet. And Arkady went to the hospital. On the way, he bought a beautiful bouquet of flowers and turned everything in his head. What words will the unexpectedly discovered daughter say? And he could not find anything sensible. Whatever it is, he decided. In the corridor, Arkady faced Galina Viktorovna. She looked down and passed by, even without saying hello. Arkady had no offense against her. He just didn't want to think about her for a second. The policeman at the entrance to the room looked at the permission and let the guest in. Nastia was alone in the room. Looking at the new visitor and recognizing his savior in him, she smiled. "Hello," she quietly said. "Hello, Nastia." Arkady spoke with a shiver in his voice. "Finally we can talk. How are you?" "Everything is fine. Did you get permission? Is the investigation over?" "I'm sorry. I'm not talking about that. I want to thank you first of all. I don't know how I deserve such a sacrifice from your side." "Don't, Nastia." Arkady killed her. "No thanks. I should thank fate for leading us." The girl looked at him in surprise. "I don't quite understand you," she said. "I'm sorry. I missed something." Arkady put a bouquet on the bedside table near Nastia and sat next to her bedside table. "I'll explain everything to you a little later. In the meantime, can you tell me how you felt on that highway? Did you manage to remember anything?" "Yes, now I remember everything. I was driving from Saratov to Voronezh. I had to arrive at the place by morning. I had a meeting there with the readers. The last meeting and presentation of my new book." Nastia, thinking, kept silent. "You're a writer?" asked Arkady. "Yes. The diagnosis was given to me by the doctors. There was only a month left to live." And I summed up. "And relatives?" Arkady interrupted again. "Do you have relatives? Was transplantation impossible?" "Only Mom. But she also has problems with kidneys. She couldn't become a donor. And in turn to the donor organ I was. You understand that I would not have waited." Mom was very worried about this whole story. Already on the way, I was called and informed that she was taken to the hospital with a heart attack. The night was snowfall strong. Of course, I turned around and went home, canceling all my events. And on the way I met a man who was voting. He froze, dressed lightly with a backpack. He needed to go to Borisoglebsk. I agreed to give it a try. It seemed strange to me at first, but I did not give it much importance. All my thoughts were about my mother and the presentation, which I probably did not have time to conduct anymore. An hour later, something happened that I still can't remember in detail. In general, this traveler decided to just steal my car. I got a head injury and woke up only in the hospital. I got a call, it's going to be fixed. Everything is more or less fine. I got into such a mess, and you saved me. And then on the road, and then when they brought me back to life. Now it's your turn to tell. Nastia smiled again, tired. My story, Arkady started, will seem fantastic to you. But believe me, I myself couldn't convince myself that all this is not a dream, but reality. Do you know what the probability of a person dying from a shark attack? No. 1 to 264 million. And what does it mean? Meeting a donor in life with your child is even less. This is how this system works. What? Nastia got up in bed. You want to say that? Yes, I want to say that you are my daughter. I thought for a long time about my speech while I was driving here. Sorry that it turned out so crooked and unexpected for you. Nastia fell back on the pillow and sat down on the ceiling. Unbelievable, she said. I think you are sure this time you decided to tell me. DNA analysis showed. Percent. No doubt. I knew that my mother got pregnant by artificial way, but I can't imagine meeting on a snow-covered highway in the middle of the night, away from cities and villages, and even under such circumstances. And with such a finale, it's incredible. She repeated again. I agree. Unbelievable. But it's a fact. 5 years have passed. In the winter park this year it was snowing a lot, and the kids were making snowmen and snowmobiles. They even organized a contest for the best ones. Arkasha, son, go to your mom, or else it's all in the snow. The 3-year-old boy turned around and waved his hand. I'm with Grandpa. He allows me to play. Nastia. Really? Let him play some more. In minutes, Pavel will have his surgery, and we will all go home together. Arkady the elder smiled, looking at his beloved grandson, and Nastia only sighed and continued talking to the nurse Masha. They became close friends.
Don't spill water.
And now they discussed new purchases. And here is Pashka. Arkady smiled, seeing his son-in-law. He is a good man, this Tillman, kind and decent, and Nastia is like a stone wall to him. And the grandfather of Arkasha will always help if they need his help. And he will visit his grandson. And he will come to Nastia's mother for a visit and help with the household. After all, a relative is like nothing. Unwilling, but a relative. And such a relative Arkady did not even dream of. And planned his life to live alone. And it came out like this. Amazing. Miracles indeed.